The economy in Australia is roaring. Now, Australia actually has a bigger economy now than we did before the pandemic. We have more people in a job now than before the pandemic. How is anyone considering changing the government under these particular circumstances? I'll explain why there was a different way to do it and we wouldn't have got this result in a second. But the numbers that we got today is that there was a 3.4% increase in the GDP. That means, of course, growth in the economy. If you get two negatives, it's a recession. This is a huge bounce back from the previous quarter when things started to go backwards. Now, potentially, it mightn't be as good in a couple of months' time once the Omicron summer starts to be put in here. But I want to go to that far right-wing think tank, the Australian Bureau of Statistics, because they tell the actual story of the Australian economy. Now, each way, and all of his mates in the media will want to pretend that the sky is falling. It is not. Instead, the economy is surging. They put out 12 different points to help explain the economy that's happening right now. This, in part, and I'm using their exact words, are what is happening with the Australian economy. Australia's economy, as I mentioned, it is growing bigger than that pre-pandemic level. The restrictions, as soon as they were lifted, people got out, they shopped. You know that because you lived it. Households are wealthier than pre-pandemic. Put a pin in this. More people have a job, the economy is bigger, and households have more money than ever before. Why would you change the government? The lowest unemployment rate since 2008. These are all not the talking points of Paul Murray. They are not the fantasies of Sky News Primetime, as Twitter would like to say. This is what the ABS said today. For his part, the Treasurer spoke to Andrew Clennell today here on our channel.
Well, it's a very strong result. In fact, it's the strongest quarterly growth, or the equal strongest quarterly growth that we've seen in some 46 years.
And how do we compare to the rest of the world? Remember when all of those smartasses were trying to tell us that the only time you can compare Australia to the rest of the world is during vaccine rollout? Well, what about economies?
Australia's economic growth has been 4.7%. We have outperformed every major advanced economy since the start of this pandemic. The United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, Japan, France, Germany and Italy. And what's been particularly pleasing is that we've avoided the experience of the 1980s and the 1990s recessions in Australia, where we saw labour market scarring, long-term unemployment, nearly a decade to get that unemployment rate back to where it was pre-pandemic.
This doesn't happen by accident. Thank goodness we had people who were in power, who knew when to create a safety net and when it wasn't needed anymore. The alternative? Each way, and who the hell is Jim Chalmers? But these two blokes, remember what their position was, just two policies, two different policies, apart from the $6 billion to bribe people to get vaccines they already had. Their two policies that they had here is that JobKeeper had to go way longer than anyone wanted it to go, and that the economy actually needed. Billions would have been unnecessarily wasted, and you would not have had the bounce back when it comes to the jobs market. But, nothing to see here. P.S. They voted with the Greens on it. Oh, and the other one, they wanted us to buy Virgin Australia. They wanted us to buy a freaking airline. The Australian economy is bigger than it was before the pandemic. More people have a job than before the pandemic. Households are wealthier than before the pandemic. It doesn't happen by accident.